Meghan Markle was reportedly left in tears after a forensic audit uncovered a charity money trail allegedly linked to her account. What began as a routine review has now triggered legal panic, internal fallout, and mounting questions about where donor money really went and who approved it. Meghan Markle reportedly breaks down after shock. Financial discovery. The pressure had been building behind the scenes, but what took place inside a closed-door legal briefing in Montecito sent shockwaves through Meghan Markle's inner circle. According to two sources with direct knowledge, Meghan broke down in visible distress after auditors presented a document showing that charity-raised funds may have ended up in an account linked to her personal branding team. The meeting, described as tight-lipped, high-stakes, and tense from the start, involved Meghan, her U.S. legal counsel, a UK advisor via video call, and two senior forensic analysts brought in by California authorities. One of the auditors presented a payment chain originating from Archewell's donor pool, passing through a third-party vendor, and terminating in a consultancy previously tied to Meghan's lifestyle ventures. At first, Meghan reportedly denied any knowledge of the transaction path. But as more records were reviewed, including internal emails, invoice metadata, and consulting contracts, her demeanor changed rapidly. "This can't be real," she reportedly shouted, pushing her chair back and leaving the room in tears. What followed was not just emotional collapse. It was the first visible crack in what had, until now, been a controlled legal defense. Advisors inside the room say Meghan's distress wasn't just about optics, it was about exposure. The discovery came days after Archewell's finances entered a new phase of scrutiny by the California Department of Justice. The probe, initially routine, escalated after third-party auditors flagged suspicious patterns, suggesting a non-profit commercial crossover that could violate multiple compliance laws. The session ended with Meghan's legal team urgently requesting a document freeze on all outgoing financial correspondence related to Archewell's PR and consulting contracts. But by that point, it was already too late. The trail had been logged, and regulators were in possession of it. And Meghan, she was said to be utterly distraught, not just by the discovery itself, but by what it could mean, legally, publicly, and personally. The paper trail that sparked a scandal. What started as a flagged transaction labeled communications cost has now spiraled into a full-blown financial scandal with possible legal consequences for Meghan Markle. Forensic investigators, tasked with mapping Archewell's use of donor funds, uncovered multiple payments that failed to distinguish between charitable expenses and personal brand development. The most troubling of these led to a boutique consultancy firm previously tied to Meghan's commercial product launches. Legal analysts reviewing the findings point to one term: commingling. Under California nonprofit law, this occurs when funds raised for public benefit are used, even unintentionally, for private gain. It's a serious red flag that can trigger audits, penalties, and in some cases, criminal investigations. According to documents now under DOJ review, at least 2 payments described as charity-related were routed through contractors that also handled press for Meghan's Netflix promotion and American Riviera Orchard pre-launch work. "This isn't just sloppy," said a nonprofit compliance advisor. "It suggests intent, or, at minimum, reckless oversight." Once the paper trail was verified by third-party auditors, the DOJ expanded its scope. What began as a regulatory audit had now turned into a forensic investigation, with Archewell board records, bank transfers, and vendor contracts all placed under scrutiny. Sources close to the case say this particular trail, from donor to branding, may become the central thread that prosecutors follow. The implications go beyond fines. If misappropriation is proven, Meghan could be barred from overseeing any U.S. nonprofit entity for life. Inside the palace, staff have gone silent. At Netflix, previously scheduled Sussex content is on pause. And in Montecito, Meghan's team is said to be scrambling to trace any other overlaps before investigators do. William's financial experts saw it coming. Long before Archewell's financial troubles exploded into a global scandal, quiet warnings had already reached Prince William's inner circle. According to multiple senior palace sources, alarm bells began ringing inside Kensington Palace nearly a year before the public or the press had caught wind of any irregularities. The initial red flag came from Jean-Christophe Grey, William's trusted private secretary and former chief at the UK Treasury. Grey, known for his methodical approach and deep knowledge of public accountability, began conducting a routine check of international charities tied to the royal family, a precautionary measure prompted by increasing scrutiny of overseas nonprofit activities. When he reviewed Archewell's IRS Form 990s, he reportedly stopped cold. What he found was a disturbing financial pattern. Comparing the 2021 and 2022 filings, Grey noted a stark $11 million drop in reported donations, with no corresponding explanation for the decline. At the same time, administrative spending had surged, while the number of direct charitable disbursements had fallen dramatically. But it wasn't just the numbers, it was the language used to describe them. Under the vague umbrella of operational costs, Archewell had listed expenditures that resembled personal benefits more than non-profit activity. Line items included first-class air travel, luxury accommodations, high-end media consulting, and event services often associated with brand activations rather than humanitarian work. One particularly large sum was listed simply as external development support, a phrase which, according to Grey, often conceals image consultancy and media prep services in government filings. "This isn't mismanagement," Grey reportedly told William after reviewing the data. "This is misdirection, deliberate or otherwise." William's reaction was reportedly swift, but strategic. Rather than confronting Harry or Meghan directly, or risking institutional entanglement, he ordered his team to stand down and let the process play out externally. It was a hard decision, insiders say, as it went against the deeply ingrained royal instinct to handle matters privately. But in this case, William understood the stakes. If the monarchy intervened to shield Harry, it could expose the crown to allegations of complicity. Instead, William chose silence, not out of coldness, but out of preservation. "Let the documents speak," he said, according to one aide. His decision allowed U.S. regulators, particularly auditors working with the California Department of Justice, to pursue the matter without the appearance of royal interference. And now, the very trail William's team quietly observed is being used to build the foundation of a full-scale investigation. Palace aides now say the move was one of William's most difficult but defining leadership decisions to date. It proved that he would not risk the monarchy's integrity, even to protect blood. That restraint may be why the crown remains unscathed while Archewell implodes. And as investigators continue to narrow their focus on the individuals behind the financial irregularities, the audit's direction has become increasingly clear. The path leads straight into Meghan's operational circle, and potentially into her decision-making seat. What William saw coming wasn't just a scandal. It was a storm he chose not to stop, because he knew where it would land. Where does charity end and commerce begin? The legal crux of the Archewell investigation isn't just about money, it's about boundaries. Where does public service end and personal profit begin? That's the question now driving both legal and media narratives. Multiple sources inside the probe confirm that Archewell-funded events coincided with major commercial milestones in Meghan's public life, including Netflix content drops and the early teasers for American Riviera Orchard. Auditors have reviewed contracts showing that PR firms paid by Archewell were the same ones handling Meghan's product rollout. Branding kits, press lists, and media launches were allegedly covered by donor-funded budgets under outreach and external communications. Legal experts familiar with similar nonprofit cases point to a tactic known as cross-invoicing, where the same consultant bills two entities, one charitable, one private, using vague descriptors. It's a method used to hide overlapping services and deflect compliance checks. The structure itself raises more questions than answers, said one California nonprofit attorney. For Meghan and Archewell, this distinction matters immensely. If prosecutors determine that charitable donations directly or indirectly funded private brand growth, it won't just be a scandal. It could become a case of fraud. The line between cause and commerce, it seems, was never as clear as the public was led to believe. The tax filing that raised the alarm. If there was a moment when everything shifted, it happened when the 2022 IRS Form 990 was released. Publicly available but largely unread until auditors took a second look, the document revealed not only a steep financial deficit, but a structure in disarray. The form showed a $674,000 operating loss, despite millions raised the previous year. Administrative costs had ballooned, while actual charitable disbursements had slowed to a crawl. But the detail that truly set off alarms? A vague, high-cost line item. External consulting, totaling nearly 7 figures with no listed vendor breakdown. When cross-referenced with Archewell's known partnerships, investigators found at least 2 consulting firms linked to Meghan's personal ventures, including her lifestyle brand and promotional campaign managers. It wasn't just what they spent, said one forensic auditor. It's where it ended up. This line item, more than any other, created the pressure point that led to the forensic review now dominating headlines. It triggered a series of subpoenas, forced internal handovers, and exposed the lack of internal separation between Archewell Foundation and Meghan's commercial outreach. The 990 wasn't a red flag. It was a flare, and it lit the path straight to Meghan's legal doorstep. Meghan's private legal crisis. After the confrontation inside her Montecito legal briefing, Meghan Markle entered what insiders are now calling her deepest state of legal isolation to date. Gone were the stylists, press calls, and public planners. In their place, lawyers, advisors, and crisis managers, all circling one looming question. How exposed is she, legally and financially? Within hours of learning about the flagged transaction trail, Meghan reportedly demanded her legal team build a wall between her personal brand and Archewell Foundation. A flurry of internal meetings followed, focused on retroactively clarifying governance boundaries and reviewing whether conflict of interest disclosures had ever been properly filed. Multiple attorneys consulted on the matter, both in California and Washington, D.C., began assessing whether Meghan's visible role in Archewell events and spending decisions could legally be defined as executive control. If so, that opens the door to personal liability under California nonprofit law, which mandates financial accountability from any officer or de facto director responsible for fund allocation. An insider close to Meghan's legal camp shared that one of the options under consideration was the immediate filing of a retroactive resignation document, dated months prior, distancing Meghan from day-to-day operations. But several advisors warned that such a move might appear reactionary, or worse, deceptive, if placed under scrutiny. She's terrified this goes federal, the insider admitted. The IRS or FBI getting involved would be catastrophic, not just reputationally, but personally. Meanwhile, subpoenas are said to have already been issued to consulting firms connected to both Archewell and American Riviera Orchard. Meghan's lawyers are reportedly preparing privilege claims over certain communications, but investigators are determined to trace the flow of donor funds. As Meghan wrestles with the legal implications, insiders say she's begun to realize that the court of public opinion may no longer be hers to manage. With every document leak and every auditor's quote, the narrative slips further out of her control. What began as a branding project to reshape the monarchy's legacy is now a legal crisis that could reshape her own. Forever. Harry's reaction, distance and silence. As Meghan faced auditors and attorneys in Montecito, Prince Harry quietly slipped away, retreating to San Vicente Bungalows, a secluded members-only venue in West Hollywood known for privacy and silence. According to two sources close to the Sussex Circle, he's been using the location as a temporary legal base, operating independently from his wife's team. Unlike Meghan, who has remained publicly quiet but privately active, Harry's approach has been starkly different. Insiders say he's largely withdrawn from internal Archewell communications, handing over operational access to lawyers and stepping back from all public commentary. He is said to be in regular contact with U.S. Immigration Counsel, who are reportedly reviewing the potential implications of the Archewell audit on his visa status. As a co-director of the foundation, his name appears on formal filings, and while there's no public evidence of direct wrongdoing, legal advisors have made it clear. If criminal mismanagement is found, even passive officers can face consequences. He's been told to create legal distance and emotional distance too, said one longtime friend. Privately, the emotional toll is surfacing. The couple, who once presented a united front through interviews, speeches, and public projects, are now described by those close to them as operating separately. Some say it's strategic, others say it's survival. Harry's focus, one insider claims, has narrowed to three things: protecting his visa, insulating the children from press fallout, and avoiding further entanglement in Archewell's unraveling. But that distance has not gone unnoticed. Meghan, already under pressure, reportedly feels abandoned in the worst moment, according to one friend. Tensions have grown quietly, but noticeably. There are no joint statements, no new couple initiatives, just silence, heavy, measured, and growing louder. Behind closed doors, the fracture mirrors public perception. Two people who once turned away from the monarchy together, now facing a storm very much apart. The fallout in Hollywood and royal circles. As Archewell's finances fall under legal fire, its ripple effects have reached far beyond Montecito. Inside Hollywood boardrooms, phone calls have stopped. Meetings are being rescheduled indefinitely. The Sussex brand, once Hollywood gold, is now viewed as a liability. Executives at Netflix, Spotify, and several talent agencies have reportedly gone silent. One source inside a major streaming platform said a pending Sussex docuseries was placed on hold until the audit concludes, and likely longer. Even Oprah Winfrey, once a vocal supporter and host of the couple's bombshell 2021 interview, has not commented. Several major donors who previously backed Archewell, both private individuals and brand sponsors, have pulled out. According to leaked correspondence, one donor's representative wrote, "We can't be attached to any ambiguity in use of funds." Meanwhile, Meghan's lifestyle brand, American Riviera Orchard, is in limbo. No CEO has been appointed. The launch date has been moved twice. And insiders now say no high-level executive wants to attach themselves to a company so closely tied to ongoing scrutiny. This is a PR meltdown with legal roots, said a crisis consultant with ties to multiple Hollywood agencies. And no one wants to be holding the bag. In the UK, the tone is even colder. At Buckingham Palace, there's been no official statement, just quiet realignment. Events that previously included Harry and Meghan in program drafts have had their names removed. Charles and Camilla have withdrawn from private communications, reportedly on advice from senior aides. Even longtime royal supporters say the distance is now institutional. Only William and Catherine have maintained consistent visibility, and in doing so deepened the contrast. As the Sussexes spiral, the Waleses rise. For Meghan and Harry, the silence from both Hollywood and royal circles says more than words ever could. Could Meghan face charges? The legal threat grows. As investigators continue to trace the money trail, legal experts warn that the Archewell case has crossed a critical threshold. This is no longer about fixing accounting errors or correcting paperwork. Forensic audits are designed to answer one question only: was there intent? According to sources familiar with the review, regulators are now examining whether funds raised under charitable promises were knowingly routed in ways that benefited Meghan's private commercial interests. If prosecutors determine that donor money indirectly supported brand development, media promotion, or personal image building, the consequences could be severe. Under California nonprofit law, even unintentional misuse can trigger penalties, including heavy fines, suspension of nonprofit status, and forced removal of directors. But intentional misappropriation raises the stakes dramatically. It opens the door to civil charges and, in extreme cases, criminal prosecution. Legal analysts stress that the presence of commingling, cross-invoicing, and undocumented consulting arrangements creates a dangerous pattern. One former federal investigator described it bluntly. When you see repeated overlap between charity spending and private gain, prosecutors stop asking if and start asking who knew. The risk to Meghan is personal. As a visible leader and public face of Archewell, her exposure isn't shielded by delegation. Regulators are reportedly reviewing meeting minutes, email chains, and approval authorities to determine who authorized what and when. Titles don't protect you, said a nonprofit compliance attorney. Control does. If the investigation concludes that Meghan exercised de facto control over spending decisions, she could face personal liability. That could include being barred from managing or founding any charity in the United States in the future, a devastating blow to the image she built around philanthropy and advocacy. Behind the scenes, insiders say Meghan's emotional reaction isn't just stress, it's fear. Fear of subpoenas becoming indictments. Fear of reputational damage turning permanent. Fear that what began as a branding empire could end in a courtroom. For now, no charges have been filed. But the audit is still active. And in legal terms, that means one thing: the most dangerous phase is still ahead. What now? Reputation, redemption, or ruin? As the Archewell investigation grinds forward, Meghan Markle stands at a crossroads with no clear path out. Every option carries risk. Every silence carries consequence. And every statement could be used against her. Sources confirm that Meghan's team has drafted multiple versions of a public response, ranging from a carefully worded expression of concern to a full statement of remorse and cooperation. But legal advisors are divided. Some argue that acknowledging mistakes could soften public backlash. Others warn that any admission, however subtle, could be interpreted as acceptance of guilt by regulators. "This is the paradox," said one crisis strategist. "What helps in public relations can destroy you in court." There is also growing discussion around shutting down or restructuring Archewell entirely. One proposal under review involves placing the foundation under independent management, removing both Meghan and Harry from any operational role. Another option is complete dissolution, allowing regulators to close the case once penalties, if any, are resolved. Meanwhile, inside royal circles, the contrast could not be sharper. William and Catherine have said nothing, but their silence is powerful. Appearances continue. Trust remains high. Advisors close to the Prince of Wales describe this period as a defining separation between the Sussexes and the future monarchy. For Meghan, the fallout is no longer about optics alone. Hollywood relationships are strained. Donor confidence is shaken. And the philanthropic identity she worked to craft is under threat of collapse. The question now is not whether her image will recover, but whether she can survive the legal process intact. If cleared, Meghan may attempt a narrative of victimhood, mismanagement by others, or institutional bias. If sanctioned, her role in public life could be permanently altered. And if charges emerge, the consequences would extend far beyond headlines. This is no longer a media storm that can be waited out. It's a reckoning driven by documents, timelines, and accountability. For Meghan Markle, the era of control is over. What comes next will be decided not by interviews or platforms, but by investigators, auditors, and the law. And in that arena, reputation doesn't testify. Evidence does. This is no longer a story about public image or media spin. It's about documents, timelines, and accountability. As investigators follow the money, Meghan's silence grows heavier, and every unanswered question deepens suspicion. Legal experts warn the next steps could redefine her future, not as a public figure, but as a private individual facing real consequences. Whether this ends in explanation, exoneration, or escalation remains uncertain. But one truth is already clear. Once a charity trail is exposed, it doesn't disappear. It only leads forward, toward answers that no statement can undo.